Sieme, to all my Bantu brothers out there. Kimbo, Natatanzambi, Yamazulu. Betuabu, to all my Congolese brothers and sisters out there. This video today is going to be focused on a little bit about my heritage. I want to say a little bit, a lot actually, but also just about the truth, about the land, um, wherever the spirit leads us. So we're gonna go. I have a testimony that I wanted to give, that I said I would give earlier over Facebook, and I just wanted to, be true to my word. I want to complete the video as I said I would. It might be a lot, so I want you all to stick with me, but it will be worth it in the end. So I pray that you be patient with me, that I don't get too boring or whatever, and that everybody can be edified. Not just because it's not just about me, but this is about the truth. And yeah, so just for all my Bantu brothers out there, and even the people who cling to the Bantus, I hope this message upbuilds you. Now, before we get into my heritage or Bantu heritage, I would like to talk a little bit about geography. And I would like to challenge the philosophy of those who call themselves Hebrew Israelites, or people who believe that modern day Palestine is the so-called land of the Negroes, or the homeland, or whatever phrase you want to say it. I would like to challenge these people's ideology with history and facts, because everyone knows that Britannica is the Gentiles' one of the most credible websites or whatever. This is one of their places where you go if you want to check the facts. Britannica is just one of those places. It's like it's their encyclopedia, if you will, about knowledge and history and information or whatever. So I wanted to bring out how modern day Sudan, it used to be called Nubia, and it used to be known as a part of Egypt. So the territory that they have on modern day maps is not biblically accurate. It's much smaller than what's stated in the Bible. The territory of Egypt is much more expansive. So you see, Nubia is an ancient region that's in Africa, and Nubia, this ancient region in northeast Africa, extending approximately from the Nile River Valley near the first cataract in Upper Egypt, eastward toward the shores of the Red Sea, southward to about, however you say this word, in what is now Sudan, and westward into the Libyan desert. Nubia is traditionally divided into two regions. So you see that Nubia is modern day Sudan, and it was in what was called Upper Egypt. So we are going to, with this uh, cornerstone, we're going to start and so we're talking about Hamites, and then we're talking about Canaanites, and how this all ties into the land of the Israelites. Continuing with Nubia, we see that it was characterized by broad expanses of fertile soil. Lower Egypt contrasts sharply with Upper Egypt. So you see how it was split into two different regions, Lower and Upper Egypt. So the place where they have now and Sudan was also Egypt, where the centers of the habitation along the Nile Valley are never far from the desert. Lower Egypt in late pre-dynastic times constituted a political entity separate from Upper Egypt, but Menes traditionally joined the two regions, that unification being recognized in the royal title, King of Upper and Lower Egypt. So this person, this Egyptian king, back in the day, he he joined these two kingdoms or these two regions together into one because they were always one from biblical times, but obviously through things like what do you call it, tribalism, which is not just specific to Bantus, but obviously it's specific to Hamitic people as well, is that they branch off and they want pieces of land for their own. So they they broke off lower Upper Egypt as if it wasn't all Egypt, but this one king, Menes, he came and united both places, and Egypt and Sudan or Nubia was all one place, all belonging to Egyptians. Here is a pre-colonial map, and we see here Nubia or modern day Sudan is clearly a Hamitic land because here you see Shinar. This is how you would pronounce it in the Septuagint. And here is Susa, which is a Babylonian land. And here's the Tigris River in ancient Abyssinia, or this would also be called Ethiopia, modern day Ethiopia, which is Kushite territory. So this is clearly Hamitic lands. Sudan, country located in northeast Africa. The name Sudan derives from the Arabic expression blase blase, land of the blacks, which is the land of Ham, the land of the blacks, by which medieval Arab geographers referred to the settled African countries that belong to the southern edge of the Sahara. So they literally named this name the land of the blacks because they knew it was filled with black people. So for anyone to ever say that Egyptians were white people, it goes against the historical facts of their own things. This is Britannica. This is a Gentiles website. So if other Gentiles try to say that Egyptians were white, why is Sudan called the land of the blacks? And why is Sudan also called Nubia and it's a Hamitic territory? So it should never even be a question of whether Hamites were white or black. Egyptians, Cushites were never questioned to be white, and they're the brothers of Hamites, Canaanites, and Put. So this is just history we're speaking. Rising high in the sky in the modern day nation of Sudan, in the land of the blacks, is a plethora of pyramids. A plethora of pyramids in Sudan, in the land of the blacks. So these pyramids, a plethora of pyramids, were built by blacks. And they, the Gentiles, mark the site of the ancient city Meroe, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the center of a powerful civilization in Sudan, in the land of the blacks. Meroe served as the capital of Kush, Hamite peoples, Kushites, the brothers of Egyptians, whose robust culture thrived for centuries. Their grand architecture and works of art left a lasting testament to the greatness of the Nubian kings and queens. Nubia, in the land of Sudan, in the land of blacks. So these were black kings and queens. Even though they were Hamites, they were black, not white, and they were located in the desert sands near the Nile in modern Sudan, the land of the blacks. The ancient culture of Nubia played a decisive role in shaping Egypt because Nubia, Sudan, is Egypt. From the 8th century BC, serving as that kingdom's 25th dynasty in the late period. So there is no question, absolutely no question, who built the pyramids. Black people did. Sudanese people who live in the land of the blacks, in Nubia, which is Hamitic territory, the Egyptians specifically, or what people call Mitzrayim. Meroe, city of ancient Cush, Hamites, the son of Ham, Cush, the ruins of which are located on the east bank of the Nile, about 4 miles north of whatever this place is, in present-day Sudan, in the land of the blacks. Meroe is also the name of the area of the surrounding city. So it's not just that city, it's the area around it. It's called Meroe. In Sudan, the land of the blacks. And here again we have another pre-colonial map which shows Meroe not too far from the Nile River. And then we have Babylon by 2 rivers, just like how it says in the book of Ezekiel, by 2 rivers. So clearly, somebody's lying if they say Iraq is Babylon. It's not in Africa. It's not Hamitic territory. But this is. It's in Sudan, in the land of the blacks, built by Sudanese people, or Nubians, or Egyptians, and they are not too far from their brothers, the Kushites, which makes perfect sense because the territory of Egypt is not far from the land of Kush. Here we have another witness that Babylon is in Africa, not Iraq, in Hamitic territory, in Sudan, the land of the blacks, in Nubia, the land of Egyptians. It was the boundary between Lower and Middle Egypt, where the river craft paid tolls when ascending or descending the Nile. Diodorus ascribes the erection of the first fort to rebel Assyrian captives, Kushites, in the region of Sorosris and whoever this is, Persica, dates to the time of Semiramis, but Josephus, with a greater probability, attributes its structures to some Babylonian followers of Cambyses. I want you to remember this name, Cambyses, because it's very instrumental to Congolese history. In 525 BC, the Romans built a new fortress near the river with typically Roman red and white banded masonry. So this is in Lower and Middle Egypt, in the Sudan area, near Meroe, in Africa, built by black people.
Où ils sont restés pour une longue durée et où ils ont créé le Congo d'Yampangala. Le Congo d'Yampangala était la première pierre sur laquelle ils avaient construit le Congo.
Les Bas-Congo sont comme comme toutes les grandes civilisations africaines, proviennent de l'Égypte antique. Et on pense que c'est après l'occupation de l'Égypte antique par Cambyse que les populations noires ont commencé à quitter l'espace de l'Égypte antique et qu'il y a une partie de ces populations qui s'est retrouvée dans la région occupée par les Bas-Congo.
C'est que le peuple Congo vient de la vallée du Nil. Il y a eu une migration qui est partie de la vallée du Nil, qui est descendue donc, du côté est de l'Afrique, donc dans les actuels pays qu'on appelle le Rwanda, le Burundi, le Kenya, la Tanzanie, la Zambie, le Zimbabwe, l'Afrique du Sud, la Namibie, qui est remontée parce que, vous savez, nous on pense que les migrations se font comme ça. Non, les ancêtres étaient en train de chercher une terre qui donne le maximum d'énergie, c'est-à-dire des rapports avec l'immanent, donc avec Dieu.
One of the rivers that Babylon is supposed to be by, according to the scripture, is the Tigris River. And just like on the other map we showed you, here again is the Tigris River in Abyssinia, which is modern day Ethiopia, which is a Kushite territory. Now this is the third map, and the scripture says, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses let every matter be established. And this is the third map showing the Tigris River in Abyssinia, modern day Ethiopia, which is the territory of Kush, which is exactly where Babylon is supposed to be. Now we are going to start dealing with names that people can readily identify, especially in Africa. And these are the Nilots, or a Nilot if you're talking about just one person. Any member of several Eastern African peoples living in South Sudan, the land of the blacks, northern Uganda, and western Kenya. Uganda and Kenya are Congolese territories, and I just wanted to point that out because we will see why later that is important. That Nilots, some of them, dwell in Congolese or Bantu territory. Remember that. The name refers to the area in which they live, mostly the region of the Upper Nile and its tributaries, and to a linguistic unity that distinguishes them from their neighbors. It distinguishes them. It makes them different. It separates them from their neighbors who have similar physical characteristics. When we look alike, both black people, we look similar in culture, which we're going to see about that. One example of people who are not Canaanites and not Cushites, but are Hamitic peoples, are Dinka. They are Egyptians. Dinka, people who live in savanna country surrounding the central swamps of the Nile Basin, primarily in South Sudan, the land of the blacks. They speak a Nilotic language, classified within the Eastern Sudanic branch. I don't know, I have to keep repeating, but Sudan. I mean, come on. These are dark-skinned people. Of the Nilo-Saharan languages and are closely related to the Nuer. So there's another type of Egyptian people or Hamitic people, the Dinka. So if you know anybody that's Dinka, they are not Bantu, they're not Israelite, they're not Habiru, they are Hamites. Now there is proof in the land of Ham that in antiquity that there were a people called Israel. So the Bible is not just a book. It's definitely not the white man's book. Definitely not the white man's book. In the land of Egypt, from where the Most High delivered us, there is a stele written where one of their times the Egyptians they beat us. Okay, they got the better of us one time. So the Egyptian Pharaoh, he made sure he inscribed it. And it's written down in Egyptian history one of the times where they got the better of us. But that's not the point. The point is, for anyone to ever say that the Bible is not real, it's a fairy tale, it's just the white man's book, why is it that people are so quick to run to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, but overlook this fact? The Merneptah stele, also known as the Israel stele or the victory stele of Merneptah, is an inscription by the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Merneptah, discovered by Flinders Petrie in 1896 at Thebes, and now housed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. And written in this inscription is how one time they got a victory over us. So to deny the Bible, to deny Israelites as a people, is to deny history. Now, these are excerpts from what's called the Amarna tablets. The Amarna tablets are writings from the Egyptians, from also the Assyrians, from the Cushites, about things that happened in their territory and the people that they were dealing with within their territory. So it reads that the Israelites had been in Canaan from as early as the beginning of the 13th century BC may also be indicated by the smaller Bethshan stele of Seti. This is another Egyptian pharaoh. Excuse me. The stele commemorates a military campaign in which Pharaoh's forces encountered a band of warriors whom Seti's scribe called Apiru. Apiru, the Egyptian equivalent to cuneiform Habiru. What helps to identify these Apiru warriors is the place where they come from. According to the hieroglyphic inscription, these are Egyptians writing these things. So it's not the Bible. It's coming from Egypt, from Kemet, whom people love. Their homeland was Yarmuta, a Galilean hill, known in scripture as Yarmut Heights, within the territory of the Hebrew tribe of Issachar, and the scripture where you can find it at. The fact that these Apiru lived in hill country rather than the plains and low hill country of western Palestine. Let me read that again. the fact that these Apiru lived in hill country, rather than plains and low hill country of western Palestine, meaning they were not there, accords well with what we know from the biblical records. So to say that western Palestine is the home of the Israelites, you're going against biblical records, historical records as well, because even these Hamites knew better than what you so-called Hebrew Israelites profess. But I'm not trying to bash you. Excuse me. For when Israelites came into Canaan, they found the Canaanites in possession of chariots, which could more easily be maneuvered on the level, low plain. So the place where them people stay at is not even stable enough to possess chariots. But people believe that people can ride chariots on them rocky roads. Okay. Utilizing these frightening war vehicles covered with protective metal, the Canaanites successfully pushed the early Hebrews off the plains so that they remained pressed back into the interior lands. And there's a scriptural reference for that. Possibly, this was one of the reasons why the important Canaanite fortress of Bethshan, located in the wide valley of Jezreel, long remained a Canaanite city among those allotted to the tribe of Manasseh by Joshua. The existence of Apiru on Mount Yarmutha, probably to be identified as the 13th century Hebrews of the tribe of Issachar, lend an added witness to later information concerning Israel's whereabouts. As is well known, the so-called Israel Stela, which is what I just got done reading, the famous hieroglyphic monument erected in 1207 BC. So long time ago, this Pharaoh dude wrote this. Pharaoh Meneptah, whatever, boasts of a victory in battle over a people called Israel, not a state. Way before that state got created, we were a people. Not only is the defeat of Israel considered a major achievement for them, but the name Israel within the poetic internal structure of the Steelers code section is significant enough to serve as a people entity in the complementary tandem to a city-state. So clearly, if anyone is a student of history, a student of truth, to say that the Israelites were not people, to say that the book is fake, to say that it belongs to white people, you're going against historical facts, which is not wise. Now, earlier, we showed how Dinka, who are Egyptians, Nilotes, they stay in South Sudan, in the land of the blacks. But these people, the San people, or San people, who are also Nilotes, they stay way further south than their brothers, the Dinka, or even the Cushites. Why does these San people stay so far away from their brothers? The San, who are also called Bushmen, an indigenous people to South Africa. Indigenous, which means they were always there. And if these people are not Cushites, they're not Egyptians, they're not Put, but they're Nilotes, which means they're Egyptians, what else can they be but Canaanites? The indigenous people of South Africa, related to the Khoikhoi, they live chiefly in Botswana, Namibia, and southeastern Angola, all of which are Congolese territories. And these Nilots settled in Congolese territory. Besides the San, another well-known pygmy group in equatorial Africa, which is way further south in Egypt, Sudan, or Kush, or Ethiopia, are the Twa, the Batwa, who live in the high mountains and plains, the low plains, just like how we got done reading, not in rocky places, in a low plain around Lake Kivu, which is the Great Lakes of Congo. These Lake Kivu is the Great Lakes of Congo and Rwanda and Burundi. These are all Congolese places. In symbiosis with the pastoral, the Tutsi, and the agricultural Hutu. So the Hutu, and the Tutsi, and the Twa, and the San, they're all pygmies, all Canaanites, and other tribes. So these are not just these three. There are more Canaanites. Many specialize in pottery, which they market. Other hunters, some act as court musicians and attendants, because they were attendants to the Bantus. Because when the Bantus came into the Congo, just like how it says in the scripture, we did not disperse, or we did not deal with all the pygmy or the Canaanites. We did not do what the Most High said. We left them in our land. And the pygmy, or all these, the Tutsi, the Hutu, the Hottentots, other people, the San, they're still in the land. They're indigenous to our land. And the Bantus came and displaced them because it was our territory. This is an excerpt from Jubilees chapter 10 that proves that the pygmy did not go into their territory, but they went into Bantu territory, into Habiru territory, into Israelite territory, whatever name you want to call us. These people, the Canaanites, did not go into their own land. They went into ours. Chapter 10, verse 28. And it reads, And Ham and his sons went into the land which he was to occupy, which he acquired as his portion in the land of the south, in Sudan, in Nubia, the land of the blacks. And Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Mitzrayim, that it was very good, and he went not into the land of his inheritance, to the west, that is, to the sea. So he was supposed to go by Ghana, by Senegal, and Benin, all those places over there. This is where the Canaanites, this is where the pygmies were supposed to go, but they did not. They went into Bantu territory. So he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea. He dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward, from the border of Jordan to the river, or to the border of the sea. And Ham his father, and Cush, and Mitzrayim his brothers, said to him, You have settled in the land that is not yours, and which did not fall to us by lot. Do not do so, for if you do so, you and your sons will fall in the land and be accursed through sedition. So they gave him a warning. You settled in somebody else's home. Eventually, these people are going to come back and take their own home. So this is why you see the brutality that the Canaanites were treated with. So how would someone treat someone who came in their house and said it was theirs? Nobody's going to be like, hey, please, can you get out? Or you're going to call the cops. There was no cops in this time. So either you going to make them leave or they going to stay there. This is the biblical times. So this is why you see the action that the Most High had the Israelites take towards these intruders, these thieves, taking somebody else's home. And he said, for if you do so, you and your sons will fall in the land and be cursed through sedition. For by sedition you have settled, and by sedition your children will fall, and you shall be rooted out forever. Forever. Because you tried to go set up shop in somebody else's home. And the pygmies, they did not go to West Africa. They did not. They went to the Kongo. Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem. Dwell not in the dwelling of Shem. For to Shem and to his sons did it come by their lot. Cursed are you, and cursed shall you be beyond all the sons of Noah, by the curse which we bound ourselves by an oath in the presence of the holy judge, and in the presence of Noah our father. But he did not hearken unto them. So he said, forget them. He did not listen to their warning. So just like how it says in the book of Ezekiel, he warned them. Ham, Cush, and Mitzrayim, they warned him. So the blood is not on their hands. It's on King's hands because he disobeyed his own father and his brothers. But he hearkened not unto them, and dwelt in the land of Lamnin, from Hamath, which is a Babylonian territory, to the entering of Mitzrayim, Egypt, which is Hamitic territory. Both of these territories, Hamath, Mitzrayim, in Africa, nowhere near Asia, and nowhere near North Egypt, but in Africa. He and his sons until this day, and for this reason is the land named Canaan. Only for that reason. It was not given to them to set up shop in our house, called it their own. Therefore the Most High judged them with the sword by his own people. Just to show you all that I'm not tripping, I'm not reaching, that these people know this and they hide it in plain sight through their websites, what they call it truth, because it is the truth, but they hide it in plain sight. They don't put biblical terms as to let people come to the full knowledge. You have to seek and find for yourself that the Tutsi people, they are Canaanites. The Tutsi, also called Batutsi, Tutsi, or Watusi, are an ethnic group of probable Nilotic origin. Nilotic. The Nilots, they come from Sudan, the land of the blacks, from lower and upper Egypt. So they were all in the area. When they were, getting the land from the holy judge, they're all in one place. And they all were dispersed to go to that land. Ham with his land, Cush with his land, Put with his land. Canaan was like, nah, I'm going to go to the Congo with his land. And that's what they did. And these Tutsi people, they live in Rwanda and Burundi, just like the other people live in Congolese territory. Nilots, Hamites, Canaanites. For anyone who is wondering, all these maps that I have shown you, they are on Princeton's official website in their library. They're not hidden from anyone. They're just not public knowledge, but they're not hidden. You can clearly see the giants in the scriptures that these people knew These are in equatorial Africa. You see Meroe in Africa, Nubia in Africa. The gold that Solomon got is in Africa. We're going to get to that later. But all these things, all these territories, they're in Africa, which is undisputable. Now we're about to start getting into the Hebrew, to the Hebrew, to Bantu, to Israelites, and we are going to show and prove clearly where our people settled, where they came from, what they did once they settled in the land, what they came, and just everything in between. The Habiru, which is a plural form of Habiri, which is what they call Ivri, a nomadic people mentioned in Assyrio-Babylonian literature from 2000 BC on and often identified as the Hebrews of the Bible. So Assyrio-Babylonian literature. I just got done reading to you some Assyrio-Babylonian literature. The Israelites still, where the Egyptian pharaoh talked about the Habiru, how we come from Yamukta, which is Issachar, and how he was so happy to finally defeat us one time. And it's known, it's etched in history, the history of the Habib. And back then, these people knew. They knew that we are the Hebrews of the Bible. So, for anybody to say Hebrew, it's an English rendering of a word, Habiri, Habiru, though that word never existed in antiquity. So, when people say, I'm Hebrew, just it's not a real word. It's an English word, and we know how foolish the English language is. So I guess it's the same thing as saying Jew or whatever, because these words are not biblical words, but they're words that English people use to defy biblical things. So the correct term, the ancient term, is Habiri for a single person, Habiru for multiple people, multiple Hebrews. Habiru is a Shemitic term. They're called the Habiru or the Hapiru in Egyptian, Apiru. The term Habiru means outsiders, and it was applied to nomads, fugitives, bandits, and workers of inferior status. Obviously, us going into Egypt, into their territory, with the outsiders. We were shepherds. That's all we had. We can read that in the book of Genesis. We didn't have jobs like how the Egyptian people had. So they looked at us strangely. The word is etymologically related to Hebrew, and the relationship of the Habiru and the aforementioned Hykos to the Habiru has long been debated. The Habiru appear by incursions of marauders called Hapiru or Habiru, the Egyptian Apiru. This term was apparently applied by the Egyptians to peoples or social groups who were of foreign origin. We came from somewhere else. Many scholars feel that the Hapiru were the original Hebrews, of whom the later Israelites were only one branch. So they know that the Hapiru are actually the Hebrew, as it was written down in the Amana letters or the tablets, and in the Israelite stela, in Assyrio Babylonian history. These people knew that the Hapiru, the Habiru, the Apiru, they came from Canaan. They came from lands that were not rocky, but low plains, space to operate. And they know that these people were a real, not a fairy tale, not written by white men, but written down in history by Egyptians, by Cushites, by whoever was in the land to see, especially the Canaanites. They knew of us because we came in and we reclaimed our own land. And now we are about to start proving it with the scriptures. So, Abraham, our forefather, one of the Habiru, or the Habiru, whatever you want to call it, he was in Egypt, and he went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, towards the south. So when he went up out of Egypt, he went towards the south. And we're going to get into the wordplay of these things. So he went up out of Egypt into the south, like the scripture says. Perfectly. It doesn't lie. It's not tricky if you know the truth at all. And Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south as far as Bethel. So if Sudan is part of Egypt, and Abraham went up, out, south of Egypt, there is no way in hell that he went north to Palestine. No way in hell. Because he went towards the south, up out of Egypt, as far as Bethel, as far as the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place of the altar that he had made there at the first. So he went up out of Egypt to the south, into the south, going towards the Kongo, not towards Palestine. Just like how it's written in the Amarna tablets, and just like how history shows. And now, again, we have another servant of the Most High, who is telling other Habiru, other Apiru, to go and search out the land of Canaan. To go see what the homeland, what it looks like, where it is, which direction to go from Egypt, or from the wilderness, excuse me, to get into the homeland. And let's see what it says. And Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said to them, go up this way into the south, not north, not Palestine. Go up this way into the south, up into the mountains. There are no mountains in Palestine. Not one. None. You got mounds maybe. You have no mountains. And see the land, what it is, and the people that dwell there, whether they are strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it is good or bad, what cities there are, that they dwell in, whether in camps or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it is rich or poor, whether there be wood in it or not, and be of good courage, and bring some of the fruit of the land. Now the time was the time of first ripe grapes. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin to Rehob, near the entrance of Hamath, a Babylonian city, which we showed you is in Africa. Ethiopia, Cushite territories is in Africa, not Iraq. And they ascended through the south. They ascended through the south. They went up through the south and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were. Just like how I showed you in that one picture. The giants were in equatorial Africa, not Iraq. Now, Hebron was built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. So they went south of Egypt, south of Egypt. They went up south of Egypt. And I will tell you why. I'm going to show you why, actually. Why it says they ascended southwards. They went up southwards. Now, as we can see here, plainly, accurately, truthfully, scripturally, biblically, whatever, Abraham, Moses, and the people that he sent, they ascended into the south. From Egypt, if you're looking at Egypt on a low plane, on a level plane, this is the altitude it's the highest altitude in Egypt. Whether you're talking about upper or lower Egypt, it's the highest it goes. 8,625 feet. But as you ascend into the south, you go higher and you will reach an elevation point of 16,000 feet, 765 feet. So Abraham, Moses, and every Israelite that went into the land of Canaan, they went up out of Egypt into the south. Period. Now, as you go up out of Egypt into the south, you will find two types of black peoples in South Africa. The overwhelming majority of the region's population can be divided into two language families, Khoisan and Bantu. Hamites, Shemites, Canaanites, Israelites. Period. Now, as for me and my father's household, we are clearly Bantu, not Canaanite. And these Bantu people of South Africa, they migrated into the Congo. Never up here. Never where the Ashkenazi live. Never. About 5,000 years ago, many people of sub-Saharan Africa still relied on hunting, gathering, and foraging their main means of collecting food. But that was soon going to change. People in West Central Africa began experimenting with agriculture. cultivating the yams, legumes, peppers, and gourds that would become staples of sub-Saharan African diet. These people spoke languages belonging to the Bantu language family, and about 4,000 years ago they began to move. West Central African people. Remember that. West Central African people. Because West Central African people are Congolese people. Or you can say Bantu people are Congolese people. The Congo, former kingdom in West Central Africa, located on the Congo River, present-day Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is just a small part of the Congo. Just a small part. This is the west side of the Congo. But this is where everybody came from. This is all the Bantus came from. West Central Africa. We're all Bantu. So if you're Bantu, you take a DNA test, you come from the Congo. No matter if you want to deny it or not. You come from the Congo. Period. Again, as my DNA says, and as history says, as Britannica, even the white people know and confess, Bantu's history comes from the Congo. Angola is the same place. They're a South Congo kingdom. Beginning around 3,000 years ago, the genetic tapestry of the Western Congo Basin was transformed by the influx of Bantu-speaking people from the highlands in what is today Nigeria and Cameroon. More recently, Bantu speakers in the Western Congo region established the historical Kingdom of Congo, which flourished for over 500 years. Over 500 years. This is just that. This is when they came. So before they came to the Congo, they had no idea what was going on. But when they finally came into the Congo and decided to write about our history, this is what they wrote about. The kingdom was at least good for 500 years before the Europeans came, until its collapse at the hands of colonial powers in 1914. Today, Bantu-speaking people such as Kongo, Teki, Mboki, and Tsonga are significant majorities in the countries bordering the Congo River. So, the Bantu people, you come from the Congo, period. There's no denying that. And whoever tries to deny it is just going against DNA, they're going against history, and it's not really wise. The first Gentiles to enter South Africa, to enter the Congo, were the Portuguese, who from the 15th century edged their way around the African coast in hope of outflanking Islam. So Islam was trying to come get us too. So whoever is black, call himself Islam, you're fighting against yourself, because it's not our natural or our original way of life. It's a religion, and all religion do is bind you up from the truth. Finding a sea route to the riches of India and discovering additional food sources, they reached the Congo Kingdom in northwestern Angola in 1480 to 1480. So they came and started to wreak havoc, these Gentiles did, in the Congo in 1400s, late 1400s. By the 1480s, Portuguese ships were already transporting Africans for use as slaves on the sugar plantations in Cape Verde and Madeira Islands and in the eastern Atlantic. Spanish conquistadors took African slaves to the Caribbean after 1502, but Portuguese merchants continued to dominate the transatlantic slave trade for another century and a half, operating from their bases in the Congo, Angola area along central coast of West Africa. So for over 100 years, these people were taking slaves. Over 100 years, these people were devastating the Congo, not Palestine. Now, as the demand for slaves grew, the Portuguese began to move into the interior of Africa to forcibly take captives. As other Europeans became involved in the slave trade, generally they remained on the coast and purchased slaves from Africans who had transported them from the interior. So this is where people get that Africans are Africans. But this is what you need to understand, that the Canaanites were in the land. And this is what you need to understand. The Hamites were in the land. So for people to say that Israelites are Israelites because of what happened to Joseph, that's not really accurate. Nor is it what was prophesied in the book of Joel, in the book of Obadiah. It says that Edom helped white people take us into captivity. In the book of Joel, it says Tyre and Zidon helped the Greeks take us into captivity. So yes, Africans did sell Africans, but Bantus did not sell Bantus. Israelites did not sell Israelites. We were sold by Hamitic people, and we were sold by Edomites to Europeans, to the Greeks, to the Portuguese, to the British, to the Germans. So, as these Portuguese, these Gentiles, moved into the interior of Africa from the Congo, deeper into the Congo, they moved to a place called Mutapa, which was built by the Shona people, by the Bantu people, who are Nguni people who come from the Congo. The name means ravager of the lands, and you can guess who they're talking about. Also called Mutapa or Mutapa, a title born of a line of kings ruling the Southeast African territory between Zambezi and Limpopo rivers in what is now Zimbabwe and Mozambique from the 14th to the 17th century. Their domain was often called the Empire of Mutapa, or simply Matapa or Mutapa, and is associated with the historical site known as Zimbabwe or Great Zimbabwe, located in the southeastern part of modern Zimbabwe. So we are going to see that this place is actually in the Congo. In the Congo, in the interior of Africa, in Central Africa, because obviously Angola is on the coast. So they went to get more slaves, they moved into the interior, and this is the place they came. We see right here that this is the kingdom of Mutapa. The Congo, Mutapa. Within the Congo. It is all one kingdom that the Portuguese came. They raided this one, the coast of Angola, and they became thirsty or savages or whatever you want to call it, and went into the interior of Africa, into Mwene Mutapa, into Shona territory, Bantu territory, Congolese territory. Now, in the 16th century, the Mwene Mutapa's realm was invaded by the Portuguese, who moved in from the East Coast beginning in the 1930s. So obviously, everybody in the Congo, in the west coast of Africa, in Congo, West Central, we know that these people are coming. They've been coming for years now. Nobody's going to stay on the west coast and get captured like a dummy. People are running and dispersing, trying to get away from these Gentiles, from these heathens who are coming to take us into captivity. So we disperse into the interior towards the east coast. And the Gentiles, they obviously get hip to our plans, and they come from the east coast. They're not coming steadily, continually from the west coast. They come from the east coast and catch our people fleeing. Until 1560, these Congo kings, Mwene Mutapa of Angola and the Congo and the east coast of Africa, because the kingdom of Congo stretched across the whole of South Africa, had an effective monopoly in West Central Africa, the Congo, over trade with metropolitan Portugal, which slowed relatively little interest in African possessions. So they wanted more, even though they had access to things, trading with us, they could come barter with us. We had an open line of connection. They wanted more. By the 1520s, however, Afro-Portuguese traders and landowners from Sao Tome were intervening with the affairs of the Ndongo kingdom to the south, supporting their ruler, Ongola, in his military campaigns, and taking his war captives and surplus dependents as slaves. So these are Afro-Portuguese people, black people, Africans, Muslims, Moors, helping Portuguese people take Congolese people into captivity. Okay, so now the people are coming from the west, they come from the east, and our people are in a frenzy. They're scattering towards the south, and obviously the Afro-Arab traders, they're even coming down there to take people as slaves. So there's no escape from what's happening to the Congolese people in the Congo, not the state of Israel that was made in 1948. Great Zimbabwe, extensive stone ruins of an African Iron Age city. African Iron Age city. It lies in southeastern Zimbabwe, about 19 miles southeast of Masvingo, formerly Fort Victoria. The central area of ruins extends about 200 acres, making Great Zimbabwe the largest of more than 150 major stone ruins scattered across the countries of Zimbabwe and Mozambique. So this is a great place. And we all know how big Africa is in proportion to other places. Africa is a continent filled with many countries, and Great Zimbabwe extended over countries, and it was built by Shona people, by Bantu people, by Congolese people in Africa. not the fake state of Israel. Great Zimbabwe was largely abandoned during the 15th century. I wonder why. You got raiders coming from the west, they come from the east, now they even coming to the south. So people, Bantu people, just like forget these cities. We're just leaving because we have enemies coming. With the city's decline, its stoneworking and pottery making techniques seem to have transferred southward to Kame, also now in ruins, because these people followed us wherever we went. Whatever it made no difference. There was no escaping the Most High's punishment in the Kongo Kingdom, east, west, south. There's no escaping. Portuguese explorers probably entered the ruins in the late 16th century, but it was not until the late 19th century that the existence of the ruins was confirmed, generating much archaeological research. So that's when they found all that stuff. They went after we left, fleeing from them. Okay, now we can go study because ain't nobody here. European explorers who visited the site in the late 1800s believed it to be the legendary city of Ophir, the site of King Solomon's mines in Africa, in Great Zimbabwe, built by the Shona people, built by the people of Kongo, with gold. These Gentiles knew that they knew it as King Solomon's mines, as Ophir. But nowadays we gotta argue against the Hebrew Israelites who cleave to Gentiles, who say that they are Jews but are not, but do lie, but are the synagogue of Satan. But these truth is right here in your face and you can't believe it. Like what? Look at this. Great Zimbabwe Havilah camp. Another, just like Ophir, obviously we know that Havilah is in the land of Ophir. This is biblical. All these Shona people in huts, building great cities. Some of the greatest cities in Africa, built by Bantus, by Kongo people. Another ancient map, Havilah in Mozambique. This map focused on the gold-rich kingdom of Mwene Mutapa, the Shona kingdom, and the Bantu kingdom, part of Mozambique and Zimbabwe. This region was once rich in gold and was often associated with the biblical kingdom of Ophir, which is mentioned in the legend of King Solomon's mines. Africa. Definitely not in Asia, nowhere. Not in Saudi Arabia, nowhere. In Africa. To this day, on Google Maps, you can still Google and search and find Solomon's Wall in Zimbabwe. Solomon's Wall. Nowhere near the fake state of Israel. But it's in the Congo, in Africa, in Shona territory, in Bantu territory. People will only get the truth from pre-colonial maps, because pre-colonial maps are pre-judgmental, pre-European, pre-German, Portuguese, whatever you want to call it, before these Gentiles took over, there were maps written by people with unbiased opinions who showed the truth rather than what the Gentiles said or what the Gentiles told them to say. And clearly, you see Ophir in Africa, not in Arabia, and definitely not in no damn Asia. And we see the port of Ophir, where Solomon, did all the shipping with his navy and or with Hiram, and they brought the gold to Solomon and so on and so forth. It was in Africa. No Saudi Arabia, no Asia, but in the heart of Bantu, in the heart of Kongo land. That is where anyone may find Ophir, the gold where Solomon got all his riches from, in Africa. It is estimated that the central ruins surrounding the valley supported a Shona population of 10,000 to 20,000. It's been proven, not estimated, it has been proven, with an economy based on cattle, husbandry, crop cultivation, and the trade of gold. In the trade of gold from Great Zimbabwe on the coast of the Indian Ocean. Great Zimbabwe was the heart of a thriving trading empire from the 11th to the 15th centuries until these heathens came and started to step on our business, start to interfere with our business with Afro-Portuguese slave traders. We were operating in peace, a power, a world power, trading with the world until Portuguese and the Germans and the British wanted to come take our riches for themselves. In the Congo, not in the state of Israel. The word Zimbabwe, the country's namesake, is a Shona word, a Bantu word, a Kongo word, meaning stone houses. Now, the Shona people, a group of culturally similar Bantu people living chiefly in the eastern half of Zimbabwe, north of the Lundi River. The main groupings are Zezuru, Karanga, Manyika, Tsonga, Kore, and Ndau. All Bantu people, and all Bantu people come from Central West Africa, the Kongo. Now, as we saw in the previous slide, that the Tonga people are Shona people. And the Tonga people are Bantu-speaking people who inhabit the southern portion of Zambia and the neighboring areas of northern Zimbabwe and Botswana. Tonga, Shona. More than 2/3 of Zimbabweans speak Shona as their first language. So, the Tonga people are Shona people, while about 1 out of 6 speak Ndebele. Both Shona and Ndebele people are Bantu languages. They are both Nguni peoples. From the time of their great southward migration, Bantu-speaking peoples have populated what is now Zimbabwe for more than 10 centuries. So all of people in that land were Bantus. Bantu. And obviously before that, like I mentioned before, indigenous people of that land were the Pygmy people, Malak people, Canaanite people, who were there before us because they settled on that land that was not theirs, and the Shona people, the Bantu people, Congolese people, came to take our land back. Those who speak in Ndebele are concentrated in a circle around Bulawayo, with Shona speaking peoples beyond them on all sides. So surrounding the Tsonga and the Ndebele people, all Shona people, Bantus from the Congo. Now, for those of you who know that all Bantus come from the Congo, and the language of the Congolese is Kikongo, and there is no H in Kikongo, it would be easy for you all to make this transition that the Tsonga, which are also called Tonga or Thonga, are the Tonga people that we just got into. Because there is no H in Kikongo. But for those of you who are new and who are just hearing this message for the first time, we will in fact prove that the Tsonga and the Tonga people are the exact same people, even though it's before you, but some people are hard-headed and will prove it without the shadow of a doubt. Now, Tsonga, also called Tonga, also called Tonga, culturally similar Bantu-speaking peoples, which means they also come from the Congo, which was prefacing everything I said by Keep Kongo, which is the language of Congolese people, or aka Bantu people. Inhabiting the southern coastal plain of Mozambique, parts of Zimbabwe, Swaziland, and Transvaal of South Africa. They numbered some 4.6 million in the late 20th century. Tsonga. Tsonga. Remember the name, please. Tsonga. Here is a map of the Tonga people, the Tsonga people, Shona people, Tonga people, and Mozambique and Zimbabwe, and areas of southeastern Africa. The name Tsonga or Tonga comes from the Mozambican Ronga, meaning from the east. Because obviously Mozambique, Zimbabwe is on the east coast of Africa. Some northern province Tsonga call themselves Shangan. Others refer to themselves as Tsonga. And you will see later on in this presentation, Shangan are Shona people. They are Tsonga people. They are one tribe of people mixed together because they all are Nguni people. They're all Mozambique, Zimbabwe people. They're all Tsonga. So, as we have proven so far, the Portuguese, these Gentiles, these heathens, they took the whole of Congo, from the west coast to the east coast. And when they topped off Zimbabwe, the whole kingdom of Congo, they took it all. Portuguese in Portugal claimed a swath of territory from Mozambique to Angola. And just think about how big it is, because Africa is a continent full of countries. So they took the whole Congo kingdom from West Central Africa to East Central Africa, all the way South Africa. They took the whole of it. They took, that's why I swore, it took a whole huge chunk of land. Although the Germans, whose territory bordered Mozambique to the north, accepted Portuguese claims establishing Mozambique's northern boundary, the British claims to the region contradicted those of Portugal, leading to prolonged negotiations. However, the Portuguese crown was heavily in debt to British financiers, and the small country was no match for Britain's military. In 1891, Portugal was forced to accept Britain's definition of Mozambique's western and southern boundaries. So, just like how it says in the book of Job, they parted the Most High's way. They parted the Congo. Nobody's parted the what do you call it? The state of Israel, because it wasn't even thought about in this time. In 1948, nobody even parted it then. Only the Ashkenazi lived there. Okay, you have a little Falasha, you little Sephardic, so-called Jews, Jewish people, whatever. They said that, but everybody stayed in. It was not parted. They literally, the Congolese, the Germans, and the British. Okay, you get this piece, I get this piece, you get this piece, we all agree. This happened in the Congo, not the state of Israel. As history has shown, and as my DNA is now showing, Bantu people, Congolese people, clearly lived in Southeast Africa. But, as we also have seen, before Bantus moved into the Congo, into Southeast Africa, the Khoisan people were there, the San people were there, the Tutsi people were there, the Hutu people were there, the Hottentot people were there, the Twa people were there. All these pygmy groups, all these Nilotes, all these Canaanites who did not go into their land that was given to them in West Africa by the time, but they rather lived in the Congo, in Bantu territories. That's why you have stories like the Amana tablets and the scriptures where Bantus or Habiru going into the land of so-called Canaan, going really into our homeland and taking back what was ours from the Canaanites or the Nilotes, the Pygmies, and so on and so forth. Within the last 3,000 years, metallurgy and agriculture arrived in Southeast Africa with the migration of Bantu-speaking peoples. So we brought our agriculture, we brought our intelligence of how to work with cattle and all these things, our skills with the stones, our skills with metals, just all the things that the Most High gave us. You can see how he gave it to what was his name? Bezaleel, and I forget which chapter of Exodus, but he gave us all the knowledge that we have. No man gave it to us. From the highlands of what is today Nigeria and Cameroon, the historical center of this eastern Bantu migration lies in the African Great Lakes region, in the Congo, what was called Fort Victoria. This is Congolese territory. So we went from the Congo even further south into Mozambique, to South Africa, Zimbabwe, Zambia, all the places, Tanzania, all these places that we went to, and we hit them with our agriculture. We hit them with our intelligence that runs along the western edge of Kenya and Tanzania. Today, the largest ethnic groups in Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and all Bantu speaking languages. So we literally displaced all the Pygmies, all the Canaanites. We displaced them. Bantu people did. And we took back our territory because it was by that work of the Most High. And obviously, because of our disobedience, then the Portuguese came and displaced us. Just a reminder, the Khoisan and the Bantu. Khoisan, Nilots, Hamitic people, Bantus, Shemitic people. Differences. Looking the same, but different. Living in Africa. Southern Africa occurred in two streams and was part of a wider expansion of population speaking Bantu languages that ultimately derived from the Niger-Congo languages of Western Africa some 2,000, 3,000 years ago. The Bantus came from the Congo, fleeing Portuguese persecution, German persecution, British persecution. Eastern stream Bantu speakers associated with the earliest farming communities in well-watered eastern half of southern Africa date from the 2nd to the 5th century CE. So we brought in our agriculture to the beautiful land of the Congo. Who knows? I can't even speak on what the Khoisan and the San and all other pygmies, the Hutus, or you can't speak to what the Canaanites were doing. But history shows that the Bantus came in there with their agricultural skills and really flourished. Period. Initially, the southeastern coast was far less concerned to the Portuguese than Central West Africa, the Congo. Because obviously, the Congo is the most highest land. It's for the riches. It's for the gold, diamonds, cobalt, whatever the earth needs. It's in the Congo. And these people, at first, they were satisfied with taking whatever it was from the Congo. Slaves, gold, whatever they wanted, they did. But within a few years of their arrival, however, they had seized its wealth, Southeast Africa's wealth, divided cities, and had established themselves in Mozambique and Sofala, which soon became key ports of call for ships on the way to India. So they took over the Congo and went to Central Africa. They took over Moenica. Then they went to the East Coast and they took over Great Zimbabwe. They took over everything and set up boats for themselves to establish business for themselves, to take our resources and ship them off to other people and trade for themselves, to build wealth for themselves on the back of Congolese people and on the back of the land of Congo. And we have another kingdom called Mapungubwe, developed as South Africa's first urban center during the 11th century, starting as a large village like Schroeder and Draft Point. Mapungubwe rapidly developed into a town of approximately 10,000 people. Differences in status were clearly demarcated. The elite lived and were buried at the top of a shark sandstone hill in the town center, while the rest of the people lived in the valley below. Hilltops graves contained lavish goods, including a carefully crafted gold rhinoceros. So the royal people were obviously they were buried like royalty with gold surrounding tombs, and obviously the other people they lived at the bottom of the temple. Now here's a plaque that was commemorated by the University of Pretoria, recognizing Mapungubwe as an ancient Bantu civilization. Obviously, it was built by the Shona. The Shona people come from the Congo. So this is a Congolese civilization that obviously was eventually taken over by Gentiles, by the Portuguese. At the 9th and 10th century, sites such as Schroeder and this one in Limpopo Valley, the ivory and the cattle trade seems to have been of a major importance. But later sites such as Mapungubwe and Manakwini in southern Mozambique and Great Zimbabwe, which date from the late 11th to the 15th century, owed their prosperity to the export of gold. But obviously, the Portuguese, the Germans, and the British came and took our gold to where we had to flee and scatter everywhere. From at least the 3rd century, the Iron Age, people who practiced agriculture and kept both cattle and small livestock moved to Mozambique as part of the migration of Bantu speakers from Central West Africa, the Congo, toward the south and east. So obviously this migration is happening because of the invasion of the Portuguese, the Germans, and the British. These people had mastered iron technology and combined the cultivation of some grains with the knowledge of fruit and tree crops. So the Most High gave us wisdom. He gave wisdom to the Bantus, to the Congolese people. In the process, they created such sustained population growth that they needed to expand their territory. Obviously, also, the fact that Gentiles was coming and attacking us. In a slow but fairly steady process, one branch of Bantu speakers moved east towards the Indian Ocean. Although the early history of the islands is uncertain, the early history, you could say, because at first Europeans didn't know who was there because they weren't there, and later on we're going to get to that. The Europeans thought that the islands were explored by Arab and Persian traders in antiquity, and like Madagascar, settled by small numbers of Indonesian people, gaining a sizable population only when Bantu-speaking peoples from the African mainland settled there. And clearly, they came from Mozambique and Zimbabwe, which is the territory of the Tsonga people, the Shona people. Shirazi Persians are thought to have arrived there later, establishing Sunni Islam as the dominant religion. So other people, Persians, other what do you call it, Hebrews, Arabs, they came and forced their religion upon Bantus, who had their own way of life before these people came to the island. Malagasy peoples, complex about 20 ethnic groups in Madagascar. The largest group is the Merina, who primarily inhabit the Central Plateau. And this is because these are the people who took over afterwards. And these people are not Bantus. Um, yeah, they're not Hebrews either. They're all the way Gentiles. The second largest group is the Batsimaraka, who live generally in the east. The third is the Batsilio, who inhabit the plateau around whatever this is. Others include the Tishmiti, the Sakalava, the Antandroy, the Tanala, the Antermo, and the Bav. So now we in Madagascar, Bantu peoples and Arab peoples and Gentiles have all come to this island. A part of the Antermo claims an Arab origin in Mecca, so obviously these people are not Bantus. However, the reference to Mecca may not have referred to a geographic location in the Arabian Peninsula, but to a Muslim identity. Their traditions and history are written in the Sarabic manuscripts written in Malagasy with Arabic characters. So they rely on Islam. These people do. The Antermo society has a hierarchical system in which political powers and magical and religious affairs are separated. The three main subgroups can be distinguished according to this structure: the Antioni, Antaloatra, and the Empanabaka. All these people, the Antioni, are descendants of the aristocrats from whom the Antiermo king is chosen. So all these people, they're Arabs. Haplotype sharing analysis with 17 markers showed that the Antioni and Antalaotra did not share any Y profiles with the Malagasy and the Comorian people. These are also Arab people. The Empanabaka shared two profiles with E1B1A and E2B. These people obviously sharing the same haplogroup. This is a subgroup of E1B1A. These are the Israelites. And these people, the Arabs, are cousins of Israelites. And they share a profile with the Israelites because they share a father, Abraham. With one Antandri people and one Antanosi people. My people, E2B Antanosi people, a subgroup of E1B1A. The Antanosi individual, respectively, from the southern coast of the Great Island. 3 Malagasy populations were not considered for the statistical calculation due to the low number of individuals in the sample: the Marina, the Timisa, whatever, and the Antisaka. And the Adriana was excluded as an inbred population. So these are probably some Moabite people, or Ammonites, whatever. Nevertheless, the search for the Y haplogroups, or the haplogroups using 17 YSTR markers, revealed that no lineages were shared between these groups and our Antermo groups. So none of them. The Arabs are the Arabs, and the Israelites are the Israelites. No shared lineages between these people. As we can see, the Y DNA E haplogroups, E1, B1A, one, all those subgroups. Here we see mine, EM85, formerly E2B, is the same one of the Antonesi, the same one of the E1B1A, and this is my haplogroup. See, my haplogroup is EM85, the same one as the Antonesi people, the same people who share a YSTR haplogroup with E1B1A, because I am a subgroup of E1B1A. As my people ventured out of Eastern Africa, they branched off into diverse groups that crossed and recrossed the globe over 10,000 years. Some of their migration can be traced through their haplogroups, families of lineages that descend from a common ancestor. Your paternal haplogroup can reveal the path of the men in your paternal line. So, obviously, my people from Kongo, from Tapa, from Mozambique, we went into Madagascar, establishing our own kingdom, trying to get away from the Portuguese, Brazil, or the Portuguese, the Germans, and the British. Excuse me. Here we have another article which shows that the E haplogroups, they are responsible for the Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralism. We brought that into South Africa, even into what they call the Neolithic period. We brought some of it into the European areas because our people, obviously, we were the first people with our original name, and we spread everywhere. Now we see here, according to this old English dictionary, that Hebrew is a member of the Shemitic peoples inhabiting ancient Palestine, that's what they say, and claiming descent from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Israelite. Shemitic language of the Afro-Asiatic family. We just seen that according to another European article, that Afro-Asiatic languages belong to E haplogroup people, and E haplogroup people belong to Africa, not Palestine. Getting back to E haplogroups, Africa. Your paternal line stems from haplogroup E96, the root of all E branches in Africa. EM96 slightly split from D, its brother haplogroup, between 62,000 and 70,000 years ago, where the two lines diverged though, and the location of the first man to carry the EM96 haplogroup is still debated. Some researchers indicate that E rose in northern Africa because that is where most haplogroup E lineages are found today. Other research suggests that E rose in Southwest Asia and migrated back into Africa shortly afterwards. That's a lie, because, like it says, most haplogroups of E are in Africa. So history doesn't lie. It doesn't matter what research or philosophers say. History shows that EM96 is in Africa. Since then, migrants have carried it throughout the continent of Africa and into neighboring regions of Europe. So it was in Africa, Then it went to Europe and the Middle East. Within Africa, haplogroup E M96 is extremely common and widespread because it started in Africa, not Asia, reaching levels of 75% or more among Arabs and Berbers in Morocco. This is why the Antaimo people of Madagascar claim to be of Arab origin because they share this EM96 haplogroup. But I am EM95. So we split off into two different places. Senegalese in the Western Africa and Bantu speaking people in South Africa and Kenya. Haplogroup A, which is Adams, Y haplogroup in Africa, in East Africa. This is the Congolese area. And then the spread, EM96, in Africa, not Asia, but in Africa. And it spread everywhere. Boom, 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 boom. From Africa, not Asia. Step by step from A, this is my genealogy. From Africa, all the way down from Congo to Southeast Africa, all the way down to Madagascar. This is the lineage of my people. From Africa on up. Again, you'll see haplogroup EM75, a Y chromosome DNA group, along with haplogroup EP147, which is another branch of mine. This is obviously EM96 is the oldest one. It came out of East Africa, not Asia. And it had this one and this one. These are both my forefathers. This is my another forefather of my haplogroup. Haplogroup EM41 has been found mainly in the population of the Great Lakes, in the Congo, and the Upper Nile regions of Central East Africa. In the Congo. So they found them in these people, even these people, in the Bantus of all of these areas. Bantus in these areas share my haplogroup. Haplogroup EM54 is the son of EM41, and it has been found in Rosa of South Africa, the Rima people from Burkina Faso, and the Daba of Cameroon, and the Zulu of South Africa, the non-Khoisan people, non-Canaanite people of South Africa, the Bantus of Kenya, some of these Arabs, and what do you call it? Some of these Central Sudanic and Saharan languages of the Cameroon and the Malagasy people, my people, the Amatosi people, and a sample of Central Africa, a sample of Mandera from northern Cameroon. So these people are people, Bantus, within these groups of people who share my lineage. EM85, my haplogroup. It has been suggested that EM85 Y chromosomes have spread through sub-Saharan Africa. Quite recently, based on the fact that the YSTR microsatellite haplotypes associated with these chromosomes show a low degree of differentiation through their broad geographic range. So that means these people, my people, throughout all the land that they traveled, from the Congo to Manitoba to Great Zimbabwe to Madagascar, they stayed within their own people. They married within their own people. There was a low degree of differentiation throughout the broad graphic range. So all the space that they traveled, chromosomes stayed the same because we married within our families, as it is written in the law. Furthermore, the mean variance of STR alleles of my haplogroup, EM85 chromosomes, is higher in Central Eastern Africans than it is in Southern African Khoisan, in the Pygmies, and the Canaanites, leading researchers to propose that EM95 might have been involved in the range of expansion of Bantu-speaking peoples from Central East Africa toward Southern Africa. This is what my DNA says. We came from the Great Lakes and moved towards South Africa, toward Mozambique, to the area of the Tsonga, to the area of the Shona. There is also widespread evidence from linguistics, archaeology, and tradition of influence from Afro-Arabs settlers on the coast before 1000 CE, which is obviously the Comorian people, the Arab people that followed our brothers. There is a slighter evidence of an Indian influence in vocabulary, but there is no trace of Hinduism in Malagasy culture. Evidence of the Sunni Islam appears only later in coastal settlements, and you'll see why this is, because obviously the first people of the island were Bantus, and these people, these Afro-Arab settlers, came on afterwards, and you will see why. By the time coastal peoples were first encountered by literate European observers in the 15th century, which means there may have been, and you will see there certainly was, illiterate Europeans that were not able to write down or talk about what they observed in Madagascar, because people were in Madagascar way before the 15th century. But according to these literate people, these so-called scholars, it was only in the 15th century that these people saw people that many were recognizable forebears of South Africa's contemporary population, obviously, because they came from Mozambique. This means, but this does not mean, however, that these societies were static and unchanging. New kingdoms and chiefdoms were formed, and older ones disintegrated, the result of both internal and external agency, while new ethnic and cultural identities began to be forged in the hazardous new world resulting from Africa's incorporation into the Atlantic economy. Meaning, by trading with Portuguese and Germans and British people, we opened ourselves up to attack because they wanted our riches. They came down to the Congo and ravaged us, forced us to flee, and then followed us where we fled to. While in many areas, ceramic evidence suggests cultural continuity over many centuries, over many centuries, not just the 15th. Within these boundaries, there was considerable movement as populations expanded and found available resources inadequate. Thus, between the 16th and 19th centuries, there was a migration of northern and eastern Shona people, Shona speakers, into the center and south of the plateau. While in South Africa, new land was colonized by cattle raising peoples, as the stone walled sites in southern Highveld indicate. So while the Shona people, my people, went to Madagascar, the rest of the people that stayed behind stayed in South Africa while they were colonized and still cattle raising people and, still doing what they could under Portuguese, British, and German persecution. Similar pottery has been found stretching from northeastern Tanzania and coastal Kenya throughout southern Zimbabwe into South Africa, Mozambique, and Swaziland. So, similar pottery of the Shona people in Madagascar was found in Africa. Tanzania, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mozambique, and Swaziland. These early farmers settled in arable soils along the coast, dunes, rivers, and valley basins. Where possible, they exploited marine resources, planted cereals, and worked iron. Cattle and long distance trade were insignificant. Western stream Bantu speakers were initially more familiar with fishing, oil palms, and the cultivation of vegetables than with cereals or cattle. Even before the first millennium CE, pottery similar to that of the eastern stream was being made in the Zambezi Valley, and pottery of a slightly more recent date has been found in parts of northern Angola. It was more probable from these communities that the Bantu speakers spread into the more arid western half of the subcontinent. Northwest Zambia, southwestern Zimbabwe, along eastern margins of the Kalahari into Botswana, and later into eastern South Africa and Mozambique. And obviously from Mozambique into Madagascar. Like their counterparts in the east, western stream Bantu speakers cultivated cereals, worked metal, and made large pottery. But the evidence of livestock is far more clear cut. At first, they primarily raised sheep and goats, slightly later cattle. While some argue that the shift to livestock raising merely reflects the human impact on the environment as new lands were opened up for grazing animals, others associate the appearance of domestic stock with the emergence of different and distinctive traditions of ceramics and a characteristic settlement pattern known as the central Cattern pattern that embodies both the new centrality of cattle and a different nature of hierarchy in these communities. As the Portuguese were penetrating inland from Luanda at the beginning of the 17th century, they also moved southward. In 1617, they established a colony at Benguela, which, as in the case of the Congo Kingdom, was annexed as a part of Angola in the 19th century. Expansion inland from Benguela, however, like the initial expansion farther north, was spearheaded by Afro-Portuguese slave trade. So, just how people love to say it, Africans, so Africans. Yes, African Portuguese people working with Gentiles to destroy Bantus, to destroy Congolese people who used southern ports to outflank Portuguese control. So they was taking them for ourselves, just like how it was written in the book of Obadiah. As the slave frontier moved south, the process of constructing and then destroying slave trade warrior kingdoms was repeated. Those who were not crushed by the process sought safety in the woodlands and swamps or joined new heterogeneous communities of refugees like the Chokwe. Those who fled from the southern savannah, these new communities often became slave raiders themselves. So, after all this time, so from the Congo to Manitoba to Great Zimbabwe to Mapungubwe, and even they even started to come to Madagascar. People were just like, all right, forget it. We can't run no more. Some people was running, but then other people was just like, all right, we're gonna fight back. We're gonna start to take slaves as well because this has been going on since the 1400s. So, among the people who didn't just flee, but started to take slaves for themselves were my people, the Sakalava, which means people of the Long Valley. And they were using large canoes that could seat 50 or more. They sailed in fleets of several thousand men and pillaged the Comoro Islands, modern Comoros, northwest of Madagascar. So our people was like, okay, we've been ravaged for so long. We just gonna do some ravaging ourselves. That's us. This is the mentality that these people chose. My people. And the people of Comoros were Muslims. They were Arabs. So just like how you see the people when they were going back and forth about who was there first, clearly the Bantus were there first. And we're going to get to that later in this presentation. But then the Bantu peoples went and took Arab slaves for themselves because obviously the Arabs were the people that were helping the Gentiles. So the people, my people, the Sakalava people, they decided to fight back. They decided to fight fire with fire. And that was the history of my people. The Sakalava people, a Malagasy people living in the western third of Madagascar. The Sakalava lived in a sparsely populated area of vast plains, grasslands, and rolling foothills. The Sakalava formed the first major Malagasy kingdom. The first. So that squashes who was there first. The Arabs or the Marine. No. Sakalava were there first. The Bantus were there first. And we developed along the southwestern coast in the late 16th century. And this goes back to what was said earlier. This was just, they came in the 15th century. And this was literate, so-called literate European people. They came in the 15th century. But we were there way before that. That is just when they recognized our kingdom. And we split into two allied kingdoms in the mid 17th century. The Sakalava reached the height of their power in the next century. Their rule extended over nearly half of the entire island, and they carried on lively trade in cattle and slaves with the Europeans in exchange for guns and other manufactured goods. So we were ruling the whole island, and we were taking Arab slaves, and we're selling Arab slaves to the Europeans in exchange for guns and other goods or whatever. So obviously the Arabs could not have been there first. Otherwise, they would have had the kingdom first. But no, Bantus were there first, and we had the kingdom, and we sold them. As it was said earlier in this presentation, the Bantus, when they got to Madagascar, they formed new kingdoms and new chiefdoms. So the Sakala were first, and they broke down into smaller groups in their kingdom. One is the Antinosi, my people, who come from obviously the Sakala people, which is one of the same. And the Sakala people are Shona people, who come from Madagascar, or who come from Madagascar from Mozambique. And obviously the Shona people come from Mozambique and Zimbabwe, and this is the territory of the Tsonga people. So the Antisife, the Shinhaka, and Takarana, and Beta, whatever these people, we were absorbed by the Marina, because the Marina eventually took over the kingdom when we got the squabbling amongst ourselves. The Zano, those with braided hair, and the Mahala, those who make taboos. These ethnic names do not stand for clear-cut cultural boundaries, for in many cases, one group imperceptibly shades imperceptibly into another. So, like the Antinosine and the Sakala, they're all one people. So were these people, and so were the Antisakan and the Antandroid, because obviously the Antandroid, as we saw earlier, has the E1B1 DNA, and the Antinosia are a subgroup of E1B1A. The Sakala were the first ethnic group to form in Madagascar, and descended from the African Bantu, from the Shona, from Mozambique, of the Tsonga. Their name means those who live in the Long Valley. The home of the Sakala extends from the southwest of Madagascar to the north, to the island of Nosy Bay, obviously Antanosi Bay. Morondava or Mahanjaha are among the most important cities. In the north, they are among the farmers of large coffee and cocoa plantations. Historically, the Sakala were ruling for a long time, a ruling group. They were for a long time a ruling group in Madagascar, who sold people as slaves to Europe in exchange for weapons and other valuables. So obviously, we've seen before they sold Arabs. They sold the Arabs to the Europeans, and blase. Antanosi, my people, of the Sakala people, obviously, they live in the Anosi region, Anosi Bay, obviously, in southeast Madagascar. Some also live near the Zaha, west of the river on the Lahi, where their ancestors, fled after the conquest of the Antinosi by Marina. So obviously, the Antinosi people were ruling in Madagascar until these Gentiles came and overtook us in the 19th century. Today, they are some of Madagascar's smallest groups that live on rice, cassava, fruit, etc. The first evidence of their presence on the island dates back to the 9th century. So just because illiterate European people came in the 15th century and started to write about us, just because that's when they started to write, doesn't mean that's when we were first there. Clearly, we were there beforehand. It's just that that's when they started to notice us, in the 15th century. Since then, the Nunci have experienced eventful history of wars, occupations, uprisings, and changing rulers. Stone monuments, because they are Shona people, reminiscent of their ancestors and Zebus as a dowry for brides, are still a visible tradition today. Most Antinosi men have several wives. Obviously, they're Hebrews, Israelites, they practice polygyny. Hey, what can I say? My people. The Antinosi are one of the latest African diaspora groups in the world to be created as a result of the slave trade. They are sometimes classified as a subgroup of fishing peoples known as Vizo, who themselves are a subset of Sakalipa people, just like I received before. It's E1B1A, E2B. Antinosi are a subset of the Sakalipa who carried the E1B1A gene. In Madagascar, we were the rulers. The kings of Madagascar were the kings of Kongo, were the kings of Great Zimbabwe, were the kings of Manitap. Same people, ruling until the Gentiles came and dethroned us. Although the Makoa maintain a distinct identity, one reinforced by their larger stature and historic employment as police officers by the French colonial administration. The term Makoa is used today in Madagascar to refer to not only those who are believed to be descended of the Makoa slaves, but also those who are very dark-skinned and those who are physically robust and powerful. Slave trading was a major source of wealth for the Malagasy kings, the Antanosi people, who come from the Sakalipa people, who were the first people to rule the island of Madagascar. Since at least from the 16th century, obviously, because the illiterate Europeans came in the 15th century. So at least from then, that's what they know about you. When the first people from Mozambique, the Tsonga, the Shona people arrived in the western part of Madagascar. They were not slaves, but rather migrants relocating to Madagascar to escape the slave trading that was ravaging the eastern coast of Africa. The Portuguese, after they took the Congo, they moved to Manitapa, and they moved to Great Zimbabwe. So our people fled from them to Madagascar so we could become kings of Madagascar. And eventually, because nobody can escape the word of the Most High, we were taken into captivity from Madagascar. The largest slave trade ports in Mozambique were located in the north, an area traditionally populated by the Makoa people, or the Antinosi people. And while not all the slaves exported from these ports were Makoa, the name came to be associated with slaves exported from the area. So it's what the French people, it's what the Portuguese people, it's what the Gentiles started to call people from that land. So it's a byword, just like how the scripture says we would become. Makoa is a byword because these people were kings, not slaves. Although slave origin continues to be an important marker of low status in other regions of Madagascar, this factor is not as relevant in Sakalava territory. The label Makoa more closely resembles an ethnic rather than a chaste distinction. So the Makoa are a group of people, not a word that you call everybody for slaves. No, it's a people. The Antanosi people, Sakalava people. Sakalava are organized into clans, each with separate duties that perform periodically for royalty. Sakalava social organization is hierarchical, consisting of royalty, the people, and the commoners, who may also simply be called Sakalava. No Makoa within the territory of the Sakalava. There's respect among the Bantu people. Among the Shona, Tsonga peoples, there's respect for one another. Ubuntu. Other important markers of ethnic affiliation include regional dress, such as a waist wrap for men, and the two-piece body and head wrap for the women. So just like how Paul loves to talk about in Corinthians, so the Sakalava people do in real life, the Bantu people do in real life. Head wraps for the women and a royal garment for the men. Dietary preferences. That's Leviticus chapter 11 all day. The observance of local food and behavioral taboos and dialect. Census conducted among the Sakalava during the colonial period and following independence in 1960 have periodically included such groups as the Vizo, who are fishers of southern Madagascar, and the Makoa, people of African slave descent, found along the west coast, or obviously the Shona people. Sakalava draw strong distinctions or sharp distinctions between local insiders, referred to as Teratini, or Toplantini, masters of the soil, but these are people. These are local insiders. These are obviously more Sakalava people. And Vahini, or guests, which is people that are not Sakalava, or Gentiles. So clearly here we have an ethnic composition. An ethnic composition, which means the Makoa are actually people, not what do you call it, a byword, but a group of ethnic people, which is obviously the Antanosi, which come from the Sakalava, the original kings of Madagascar. But obviously, things happened to where the Marina took over, and now they rule the island. Before they ruled the island, though, Madagascar's history had been marked by the formation and expansion of royal kingdoms. And here, the Sakalava are no exception. Obviously, the Antanosi, the Bara people, the Antisaka people, the Antikara people, Batsimaraka people. They are all groups, kingdoms of the Sakalava. Today, the Sakalava form the island's fifth largest group of Malagasy speakers, who, as a whole, comprise the majority of Madagascar's population. So all these, even though these kingdoms were split into different ones, like we said before, even though they're split, they imperceptibly they just shade into one another. They're all the same people. They're all Bantus. They're all Shona. They're all Tsonga. But they, for whatever reason, they split into different kingdoms amongst the island, and obviously that helped cause separation and division to where the enemy, the Marina, were able to move in and capitalize. These monarchs adopted the cultural traditions of subjects in their territories and expanded their kingdoms. They took on divine status. They took on divine status. I have said, you are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. And new nobility and artisan classes were created. Thus, you have my people, subgroups of the Sakala. Madagascar functioned as a contact port for other Swahili seaports, city-states such as Sofala, Kilwa, Mombasa, and Zanzibar. By the Middle Ages, large chiefdoms began to dominate considerable areas of the island. They quickly subdued the neighboring princes, starting with the southern ones in the Mahalafe area. The true founder of the Sakala dominance was Andri Nisara, and his son extended his authority northwards, past the Mongoki River. His two sons extended their gains further towards the Songhai regions, which is now Mahanja, to the Songhai region. The Tsonga people are a diverse group of peoples that include Shangaan, Tonga, and Tonga. These people in Bakalanga and Valoy, to name a few. Tribal differences often lead to the rejection of the title of Shanga or Tsonga. So people suppose that there's so many different names and so much tribalism that people don't even like to be called Shangaan or Tsonga, even though it's their heritage. Depending on who you're speaking to, it's important to understand that the Tsonga people share one origin. They're all Tsonga people. All these people, Shonga, Shangani, Tonga, were all Tsonga people. But each tribe has assumed different identities because of tribalism. Tsonga people can be found in South Africa, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. And obviously, when we fled because of Portuguese persecution, the Tsonga people, we fled to Madagascar. So Shangani was captivated by the beauty and fertility of the land in the Kongo. The beauty and fertility of the land, because the scripture says it's not like the land of Egypt. It's a land of milk and honey, full of mountains. You know? As well as the humility of its people, the Bantus, which consisted of Nguni and Tsonga tribes. Nguni. Tsonga people are Nguni. Tsonga. So Shogani captured and ruled the tribe against Shaka's wishes and taught his new tribe the ways of the Zulu. Young Tsonga men were trained as soldiers according to Shaka's military system, and this army overran Portuguese communities in Mozambique. So Shangani founded and was the king of the Gaza kingdom, which was located in southeastern Africa, in the area of southern Mozambique and southern Zimbabwe. the area of the Tsonga and the Shona people. Gaza Kingdom, established in the highlands of the middle of the Sabi River in Mozambique in the 1830s by Susangani, the Blonde general who fled from Zululand after his defeat at the hands of Shaka during the Zulu Nguni Wars. Nguni Wars. Known as Mafgani. Shoshangani extended his control over the area between the Komoti and the Zambezi rivers, incorporating the local Tsonga and Shona peoples into his Zulu-type state and reducing the Portuguese to tributary status. So obviously he made the Portuguese people in that area, he made them become servants of him when he was ruling in the area. And it was full of Tsonga and Shona people and Nguni people. Now, before we continue with the historical facts, I want to get some biblical facts in there too, so people will know that Gaza is a territory in Judah. Joshua chapter 15, verse 1, this then was the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom, to the wilderness of Zin, southward was the uttermost part of the south coast. And the border compassed from Baalah westward into Mount Seir. Westward into Mount Seir. So how can Esau be in Arabia, Saudi Arabia, if the scripture says Esau is west of the territory of Judah? And compassed along into the side of Mount Jearim, which is Caslon, on the north side, and went down to Bethshemesh, and passed on to Timnah. And I wanted to bring out this verse because Bethshemesh is close to Gaza, and I wanted to later on I'm going to bring out my tribe and my people as it relates to everything I'm bringing out, to where it lets you know that Bethshemesh is close to Gaza, which is in the territory of Judah. Ekron with her towns and villages, from Ekron even to the sea, all that lay near Ashdod with their villages, Ashdod with her towns and her villages, and Gaza with her towns and her villages, unto the river of Egypt, unto the great sea, unto the border of it. So all these territories, the mountains of Shamir, Yatir, Soka, Dana, Kir, Jath, Sana, Debir, Anna, Eshmota, Anim, Goshen, Holon, Gilo. All these places are within the same area of Gaza, which is in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Africa. Again, just to show you that all these territories, Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gath, Ekron, and Bethshemesh, they're all Judah territories, and they're all within the same region. So if Gaza is in South Africa, in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, so is Ashdod, so is Ashkelon, so is Gath, so is Ekron, and so is Bethshemesh. And just to give you a visual, here is Gaza, Zimbabwe, this is Mozambique, all these areas. It's right next to the coast. So you see the Chokwe people, and it would be easy for them to flee in the Indian Ocean and go to Madagascar from Gaza, which is obviously the territory of the Shona and the Tsonga people and Nguni people. before they joined with the neighboring Natal Nguni under their leader Shaka in the 19th century to form the Zulu Empire. The Zulu were only one of many Nguni clans. So obviously we had the Tsonga, we had the Shona, we had the Tonga, we had different groups of people. We had different groups of people. But Shaka gave the clan name to the new nation. He gave a new clan name to the nation. So all the people who were Shona before and all the subgroups of Shona were now called Shangan after the leader Soshangani. But before that, we were Tsonga. Tsonga. Such clans continue to be a basic unit of Zulu social organization. They comprise several patrilineal households, each with rights in its own fields and herds and under the domestic authority of its senior man. The Nguni, a cluster of related Bantu-speaking ethnic groups in South Africa, Swaziland, and Zimbabwe. So all these people before Shaka, Tsonga, Shongani, Tsonga, Tonga, Zulu, and all the subgroups of Zulu, they were different people. But Shaka united them all, whose ancestors inhabited a broad band of upland territory extending from the Great Fish River in now what is Eastern Cape Province, northward to Kosi Bay, near the border of KwaZulu-Natal province in Mozambique and the parallel Indian Ocean, aka Madagascar. Although the people of this zone originally spoke a Bantu language in common with only subtle and gradual linguistic variations, distinct and mostly unintelligible. So they're all speaking similar languages. They're all speaking Kongo because they're all Bantus, and all Bantus come from the Congo. But through tribalism, through being conquered by different peoples, people changed their language and their tribe name. The Tsonga were formerly organized as independent people, each occupying its own territory and named for a powerful, dominant patrilingus. Early in the 19th century, however, they were conquered by other Nguni-speaking peoples. The genealogy, senior man of each clan is its chief, traditionally its leader in war and its judge in peace. Headmen, usually close kin of the chief, continue to have charge of sections of the clan. This clan system adopted nationwide under the Zulu king, obviously the Tsonga people, which was adopted under the Zulu king Shaka, to whom most clans are related in one way or another, because we are all Nguni people. When the Zulu nation was formed, many chiefs were married to women of royal clan and were or royal kinsmen installed to replace dissident clan heads. So if somebody wouldn't get with the program, Shaka would send somebody to replace him in order to, keep his system going. The Sakalava Empire was ultimately weakened by internal power struggles for the throne, by attempts to substitute Islam for the ancestral faith, for the Bantu spirituality. They tried to put a religion in the place of Bantu spirituality. And after 1810, by wars with the Merino, a people of the Central Plateau are already on the way to an empire. So these peoples want to come up, our people's fighting. It's a great recipe for disaster. The British governor of the nearby island Mauritius, Sir Robert Farquhar, in order to prevent reoccupation of the east coast by the French. Farquhar supported Radima, which is one of the Arab people, his annexation of the area by supplying him with weapons and advisors and giving him the title of King of Madagascar. At the same time, Radama agreed to cooperate with Britain's new campaign to end the slave trade. In 1817, he captured the east coast town of Tamatave, from which he landed annual expeditions against coastal populations. He eventually conquered almost an entire coast, the entire east coast, the northern part of the island, and most of the two large Sakhalava kingdom. Only the south and a part of the west remained independent. So we're squabbling. The British people send Arabs to finish the job amongst us. Competition among Lavini's 12 sons divided the kingdom in the early 19th century and opened the path to a conquest by the Merino in 1850. So there you have it. Our people were conquered. The British sent in Arabs. They kept weakening our position. We kept fighting amongst ourselves. 12 sons who were just like Jacob. And hey, we were taken over and overthrown by Gentiles. Okay, so we lost our kingdom. Then the French began to extend their influence over our people, my people. And the first Franco-Marino War was 1883 to 1885, which ended with an ambiguous treaty. France was given a settlement at Diego Suarez and a resident at whatever, but the institution of the protectorate was temporarily avoided. The succeeding period was marked by disorder and internal strife. So we just kept bickering. So we got Gentiles, we lost our kingdom, and then other Gentiles came and fight with other Gentiles, and it's just all hell is breaking loose. And at the time of the French conquest, Sakhalava were organized into a loosely defined chase system, composed of royalty, commoners, royal workers, and slaves. So this is where they start to call people Nicola and start to call the differences between the different people, even though we were all one people, the Sakhalava people. Also, obviously, during the 1880s, the Portuguese controlled trade and collected tribute in coastal enclaves from Ivo in the north to Marquez in the south. But their ability to control events outside of those areas was quite limited. That, however, was about to change. Increasingly, as neighbors of the Gaza state were raided periodically for refusing to pay tribute, they began to ally themselves with the Portuguese, which the Portuguese both encouraged and exploited. So obviously this is around the time when Shoshangani, he's uniting all the peoples, and he's refusing to pay tribute to the Portuguese. So obviously the Portuguese, in retribution, started to attack all the neighboring states. Everybody that was cool with Shoshangani, everybody got attacked. And the people who tried to be cool with the Portuguese, they also got attacked. Portuguese merchants at Quelimane and Tsonga ivory traders developed routes from the Transvaal region of South Africa and from Zimbabwe plateau to coastal enterprise at Nhambwe and Maputo. During the 19th century, Mozambicans, Tsonga, Mozambicans were sold as slaves in the Portuguese and Brazilian South Atlantic trade, and Arab trade from the Swahili coast, and French trade from the sugar producing islands of the Indian Ocean and Madagascar. So these Mozambicans, my people, Songa people, were taken as slaves by the Portuguese for the Portuguese and Brazilian South Atlantic trade, slave trade from Madagascar. In this chart is a map of Africa, illustrating ports of departure for African slaves during the transatlantic slave trade, and also the location of reference African collections used in the analysis. So you see Congo, all these areas, and you see Madagascar, where my people, the Sakawa of the Atanosi people, were taken into captivity. The slave coast of West Africa in the 18th and 19th century, the section of the coast of the Gulf of Guinea in Africa extended approximately from the Volta River in the west to Lagos in modern Nigeria, or alternatively, the Niger Delta in the east, in the present day republics of Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. As history says, as DNA says once again, the ancestry is Nigerian. Nigeria's population is the largest in Africa and one of the most diverse, over 250 ethnic groups. The country's arid north is home to the most of the Hausa and Fulani people. These are not my people. While the Yoruba, not my people, not Bantus, are concentrated in the southwest, and the Ijaw people in the tropic south, and the Igbo people in the southeast. As much as 2/3 African Americans, my people, Bantus, sub-Saharan DNA may be traced back to Nigerian ancestors due to the disproportionate impact of the slave trade on the people of the region. In Congo, Unitapa, Great Zimbabwe, Mapungubwe, Madagascar, all taken into slavery. This chart right here shows the distribution of Y chromosome E sub haplogroups within the Bahamas. And right here, you'll see my haplogroup in the Bahamas. Once again, my haplogroup EM85. You see that clearly my people were taken to the Bahamas, and you will see why I have Caribbean DNA. And my people, obviously, to come to America, were taken from the Caribbean islands, from the Bahamas, and brought to America, specific to Mississippi, because that's where my granddad is from, and all my people are from. So my granddad, he obviously moved from Mississippi, came to Chicago. My dad was born in Chicago, thus I was born in Chicago. But obviously, from, or due to us being in America, we were obviously taken from the Caribbean islands, brought to Mississippi. And from the Caribbean islands, we were obviously deported from Nigeria with a before that, my people were in Madagascar, the Shona people, the Tsonga people. And before that, we were in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe. And before that, we were in the Congo, which is where we come from, according to history and according to DNA evidence, which does not lie. Now, I wanted to end this with the dream that the Most High gave me 3 nights ago when I finally came to the conclusion. I finished all my research. I'm, praying and asking for the Most High. This is the answer that He gave me. Because when I pray to the Father, I like to make sure I'm clean in my flesh. Take a shower, make sure no one's around me. No sex, no anything. Just make sure I'm clean in my flesh. And I prostrate myself to the Most High towards the east, and I make my supplication. So, in the book of Proverbs, there's a verse that says that a man you can think of something. You might be thinking of eating, and you might have a dream of eating something. Or you could be thirsty before you go to sleep, and you might have a dream of drinking something. So this night, I wanted to make sure that my mind was clear. I wanted to be pure revelation from the Father if He was going to give me a dream. And I turned off all TV. I turned off all electronics, all phones, and I submitted myself to the Father. And this night, 3 nights ago, I woke up at like 3 in the morning. And my wife, she likes to go to sleep with the TV on. So she must have turned it on while I was sleeping because I fell asleep before her. And I recognized that the TV was playing, and I woke up, and I didn't have a dream at this point. Which is 3 in the morning. So I turned the TV off, and I'm still laying in my bed, and I asked the Father to where I asked him what's up, Father? If it's real, let me know, because I'm researching. Let me know if I've been wasting my time. Let me know if it's true. Let me know what's what. And I go back to sleep, and I proceed to have a dream. And in my dream, I'm standing in a city that is completely destroyed. I don't see one soul but myself. I'm just in the city by myself. And to the left, I see open gate. And from the opening of the gate onwards, from the opening of the gate, as far as you can see, the ground and everything, just everything from the ground onwards, even the whole background, it was all white light, pure white light. And in the distance, it was a stone building and a woman standing in the middle of the steps. Like not at the top, not at the bottom, but in the middle part of the steps. So I see her, and I decided that I was about to walk towards her. As soon as I took a step towards her, immediately I was already at the front of the steps for somehow. Like I just zoomed, I was there already. And I look at the building, and I see it's a stone library. Stone library. And on the left hand side, there is the word Bantu on the left hand side. So I see, I'm like, okay. And the woman who was standing in the middle of the steps, first of all, she was a sister, and she was dressed in a white robe, and she had a golden rope around her waist, and she had like an aura, a countenance, I suppose, from her back upwards, just full of bright white light, just full. And I'm not sure if she had wings or not because they weren't outstretched, but something behind her was feather. I just saw some type of feather. I don't know what it was, but I'm just she gave me a piece of paper. So I read the piece of paper. I looked down and I'm starting to read it, and the piece of paper is blank. So I looked at it and I'm confused, and I look back up at her. And as soon as I look back up at her, she nods, smiles, and in my dream, I just knew that that was my answer that I was looking for, and I immediately woke up. So that lets me know that I am indeed Tsonga, Shona, as my DNA said. And way before I even got a DNA, this is years, like at least 3 years before I got all this information, and at least 2 or so years before I did my DNA test. Um, I had prayed to the Most High about the same thing. I asked him if I was from the tribe of Judah to let me sleep, but if I was from the tribe of Levi to let me have a dream, any dream. And this is the dream that the Most High gave me. I was back at the place where I grew up in Chicago, and I was going up the steps. I lived on the third floor in Chicago, and I was going home, and on the steps, as on my way up, there was my mom, my dad, and two of my cousins, and they were just on their way. And I started to talk to them about the scriptures, telling them that we're Israelites, telling them that we're Hebrews, and just telling them everything that I could in the dream, telling them. And my mom is listening, and my cousins are listening. But we're on the second floor. My dad, he's acting like he doesn't want to listen. My dad is a true Christian. He's a Christian pastor. He's been in the church for years. So my dad is trying to walk down the stairs as I'm talking to my sister and my cousin, my mom and my cousins. And I grab him by his arm. He had a coat on. I grabbed his coat, and I began to talk to him too. Like, you're gonna get this word too. We're talking. I'm telling him about us being Israelites, us being Hebrews, and so on and so forth. So this let me know a long time ago that I am from the tribe of Levi. And to prove this vision that the Most High gave me years ago, and according to the DNA evidence that I've just provided, I wanted to use the scriptures to where in the book of Joshua, the Levites were given land. Out of all 12 tribes, Levi was given parts of their territory. And this is the part of the territory that was given to the Levites within the territory of Judah. Then came the heads of the fathers of the Levites unto Eleazar the priest, unto Joshua the son of Nun, and to the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel. And they spake unto Shiloh in the land of Canaan, saying, Yah has commanded by the hand of Moses to give us cities to dwell in, with our suburbs thereof for our cattle. And the children of Israel gave unto the Levites out of their inheritance, at the commandment of Yah these cities and their suburbs. And they gave out of the tribe of the children of Judah and out of the tribes of the children of Simeon these cities, which are here mentioned by name, which the children of Aaron, being of the families of the Kohathites, who were the children of Levi, had, for theirs was the first lot. And they gave them the city of Arabah, the father of Anak, which city is Hebron, in the hill country of Judah, with the suburbs thereof round about. But the fields of the city and the villages thereof they gave to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for his possession. Thus they gave the children of Aaron the priest Hebron with her suburbs to be a city of refuge for the slayer, and Libnah with her suburbs, and Jatir with her suburbs, Ashtamoa with her suburbs, Holon with her suburbs, Debir with her suburbs, Ain with her suburbs, Juttah with her suburbs, and Bethshemesh with her suburbs. 9 cities out of those 2 tribes. And Bethshemesh is near Gaza. And Bethshemesh is a town where Levites would dwell, that they would be in the territory of Judah, moving along with the same travel plans of Judah, because they were in the territory of Judah. Peace and blessings to all 12 tribes of Israel. Sim, Betuaku.